Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ann Meyer, the high school principal, and I'm joined by Erin Kind, the director of guidance. And the purpose of this evening is to share with all of you information about our current freshmen and some of the course options they have for next year, and some of our thoughts in terms of making good choices as it relates to course selection. So thank you to all the parents and freshmen who are joining us. And again, this is being recorded and will be sent out, so you will have access to it. Before we begin, I just wanted to mention something that's recently come to our attention in relation, in particular, I think, to our ninth graders. We have been noticing and are concerned about some issues with ninth graders vaping nicotine, possibly THC, as well as using a new product that you may have heard of called Zyn, Z-Y-N, which is a nicotine pouch that goes between the gum, right? A little bit like chew would, but it does not require you to spit, and it releases nicotine slowly over time. So we found some vapes on the school property as well as packets of Zyn, and we want to make parents aware so that you speak to your children about this and the dangers, and maybe keep an eye out in terms of your own home and your children's property. I did want to mention too that it's come to our attention that there are some shops in the local area, particularly Bronxville, PO, and right in Eastchester, where we believe our students are gaining access to these substances, and we're partnering with the police to work to shut those shops down. And finally, we are bringing back a speaker that came in the fall. His name is Stephen Hill. He came and spoke to our ninth graders in the fall, and he'll be coming back next week to discuss some of these topics with them. Feel free to email Mr. Kind or I if you have any concerns or any information you want to share. But we felt like since we have all of you on a call, we would mention this. Now on to the main event, which is to discuss with all of you the process of making good course selections for sophomore year. So I am going to share presentation right now. Mr. Kind and I will go through this, and then we're going to open up the floor for questions, but you're always welcome to throw a question into the chat. So here's an overview of this spring and how the course selection process proceeds. So obviously this evening, Mr. Kind and I are reviewing with all of you, parents and freshmen, your course options for sophomore year. Following this meeting, you will receive appointments to meet with your child's counselor. It will be a meeting with the student and the parents to go over course requests for next year. There are some resources you might want to take a look at, including our course catalog website. In Infinite Campus, our faculty have indicated course recommendations for each student. So that would be on the student login of Infinite Campus. Any student who was interested in taking AP World History did a writing sample and should have or will be very soon receiving feedback on that writing sample. And then you will meet with the guidance counselor to discuss your exact requests. By May, decisions need to be finalized for next year, early May, and we build the master schedule each year based on student requests. Before you leave for the summer, if there are any conflicts that would prevent you from getting into a course that has summer work, such as an AP course, you'd be notified so that you do not do the summer work if you're conflicted out of the course. That happens very rarely for sophomores in general, but it does happen for certain courses. So that's the overview. What should you be thinking about as you and your child are, your freshmen are making decisions about courses for next year? There's a couple of ways Mr. Kind and I like to approach this. There are some short-term decisions that you'll be making. Short-term considerations that you should be thinking about. How did this year go so far? Was science and math easier than English and social studies, or vice versa? Did you find the reading load to be too much? Were the problem sets really difficult? How did all the overall load of your courses feel? Was it reasonable? Did you have enough time to get your homework done, or were you getting very few hours of sleep a night? So that's sort of our in the moment, how did this year go? And that's going to help us think about what we should choose for next year. And then there's some longer term considerations. And these are things like in the next 3 years, what might I want to take? And do any of those courses require prerequisites? Do any of those courses build over time? So you need to take the level 2 and then the level 3 and then the level 4, etc. And finally, and we'll talk specifically about some of this, are there courses you may want to think about waiting to take until junior or senior year for a variety of reasons? One would be prerequisite knowledge, and another would be just they're better courses to take later in your high school experience. So you're going to think short term, you're going to think long term when you think about your course choices for next year. So one thing we do recommend is thinking a bit in certain content areas about your mapping out your high school course of study. What are things going to look like beyond next year? And there's a couple of content areas I mentioned already that you're going to want to consider. If you are interested in ending up in a particular course your senior year, like AP Art, you need to continue the art sequence next year. Hopefully you took Studio 1 this year. You're going to take Studio 2 next year, Studio 3 your junior year, and then AP Art your senior year. Similar with world language, if you are interested in ending in an AP world language, you need to continue your trajectory all 4 years. And you should have started in a level 2 or a 9 level, like Spanish 9H. And then finally, there are courses that rotate. So for instance, our AP Computer Science A is offered next year. It will not be offered when you're a junior. It will be offered again when you're a senior. So think about courses like that. That's probably the only one that I can think of right now that is offered that way that you want to think about, okay, I want to take that my senior year. What should I take other years because I want to leave space for it my senior year? And then overall, as you're thinking about your balance of courses, we recommend you think about, and this is a little less of an issue for sophomore year. It's much more of an issue, I would say, junior and senior year, but balancing your reading and writing heavy courses with your math problem-based courses, so that there's a balance. So you're not taking 3 or 4 reading, writing heavy load courses and maybe only one problem set based course. You want to kind of balance those unless you have a particular interest in one, or you really don't like one type of course and you want to really load up on the other. So in general, you're going to want to think about how difficult are the courses you're going to want to take. You need to balance that. How are you doing right now in your courses? Which ones are a struggle? Which ones do you feel like you could challenge yourself more in? Have you found 9th grade? You've built the study skills and habits to take more advanced courses. Again, overall course load. What are you doing outside of school? Do you have enough time to get your homework done? Next year is going to be harder than this year. And we don't want to make too big of a jump from freshman to sophomore year. We want to make a manageable shift. And Mr. Kind will talk about this. You want to look at, over the course of your high school career, increasing the rigor of the courses that you take, but in a manageable way. We have had more students than I would ever recommend do something in the last 2 years, like go from freshman year, 0 APs, to sophomore year 3 APs. That is not a good idea. And in the past was pretty much never done. We say we don't have a limit, a hard limit, but 2 APs max sophomore year is a reasonable thing to do. And 1 AP for many students is plenty. Going from non-AP courses to AP courses is a big jump. And as Mr. Kine again will refer to, you want increasing rigor. So you don't want to go a huge jump because then there's nowhere left to go junior and senior year. You want to go a reasonable jump to a little bit more rigor for next year. And you want to do well in all of your courses. And then the following year, you can bump it up again. I will tell one very short story. My daughter is a sophomore this year in high school, so I have personal experience with this. And last year, she was recommended to move up a level in math. Of course, she was very thrilled that that was a recommendation, and I think she felt a little bit of pressure to be in a higher level math this year. My conversation with her was about how much more work she would be doing and what she valued outside of school. She's a dancer. She loves to dance. She takes dance classes outside of school. She's in the performing arts. She was just in her school musical. She was in the fall play. I told her, if you move up in math, you might not be able to do those things. You're going to be spending a lot of time in math. I would recommend you don't do that. You're doing well right now, and you have time to do the things you love. My daughter decided not to move up in math, and she has had a very successful sophomore year because she's been able to manage her course load and do the extracurriculars she enjoys and also have time to be a teenager. So as parents, sometimes there's pressures at school, there's pressures among students to put more and more and more on their plates. My role was to try to counsel my daughter to have a manageable schedule where she could be successful and also do what she loves. So I would just recommend that all of you keep that in mind. And I'm going to hand this over to, and that speaks to the health and wellness piece of this. I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Kind, who's going to continue.
Thanks, Ann. Actually, could you stay on this slide just for a second? Can you go back? I just wanted to draw everybody's attention. There are hyperlinks on the slide, the time management worksheet and the homework by department, words that you see on your screen are hyperlinks that will come through when we send this out. A few years ago, we made a big chart, which is also on the school's website in the course guide, that gives a good idea of how much homework is going to be given for each course. And so you could look at that, and that time management worksheet is something you could use to like put down the amount of time you have in your life to get things done, and sort of see how that all adds up to make sure that there is truly enough time in the day to do everything that you want to do. Because, as you can appreciate, we were finding that students were, overscheduled and overloaded. And so we sort of designed that for the students. So I would definitely take a look at that. Okay. So as Ann mentioned, there are just some next courses in the sequence. The math course that you're in now leads to a next class. That sequence is on our website and in our course guide. And Ann referred to the language and fine arts. And obviously, if you're in band, chorus, or orchestra and want to continue doing that, you have the ability to do so. Obviously, we encourage you to do so, especially for students that are maybe also taking rigorous courses in other departments, like getting to go to the studio for 80 minutes every other day is a nice, release valve for some students. And the same is true for band, chorus, and orchestra. In the other academic departments, there are some options, and I guess this is the sort of reason why we're all here. So as Ann alluded to, I guess it was before March break, you had the opportunity to take the AP World writing sample. while that sample has been scored per se, really the outcome of that process was to get a recommendation or not receive a recommendation to take AP World History. All the counselors have that information. You should be receiving, if you have not already received, information about the outcome of that process. World History, AP World History is very different from World History 1, and for that matter, World History 2. And so this is a big step up in terms of reading and writing and the expectation of the level of sort of synthesis of ideas, being able to pull together multiple documents, in addition to students continuing to participate in National History Day as sophomores.
Can
So
I
this is,
just, I'm going to
yeah,
mention something here, Aaron,
sure.
which is that a lot of the AP World work, it requires good organizational skills as well. It is often assigned at the beginning of the week, and it's up to students to organize their time appropriately to manage it. So if you're struggling managing your courses right now and your work right now, AP World is probably not something that is the right place to go next year. That is not to say that you're never going to take an AP history course, but all your courses are going to get harder next year. So jumping into AP World is maybe not the best idea. It's a lot of reading as well. If you don't enjoy reading, this is not a course you want to take.
And then Amy, and you saw Amy's question. I think we talked, so a little bit
So
jumping ahead to science. As Amy mentioned in the chat, there are 2 elective courses that are new next year. There's a semester of oceans and a semester of anatomy and physiology. And I think where we landed was we were going to allow those courses, seniors and juniors and seniors, like sort of first priority to take those elective courses, and then sort of assess at that point, if
if we have
sophomores
space.
for
Yeah.
sophomores. As a sophomore for science, if you're not already in core bio and core earth science, that is your required science class. Similar to ninth grade, and similar to some of you on the call or some of your friends, you can choose to take an additional science class. I would say more often than not, those happen to be AP science classes. They happen to be either AP environmental and AP chemistry. This is like an individual choice. First off, you have to love science. That's like the first sort of checkpoint that you need to answer. Um, um, if you do love science and you feel like you are ready for a challenge, then maybe after talking about it with your parents, maybe talking about it with your counselor, potentially your current science teacher, then you might want to consider taking one of the advanced placement courses. It's not for everybody. It's a tremendous amount of work. All of these AP courses are first year introductory college courses in these discipline areas. So it's a heavy lift as a 10th grader, and it's a heavy lift as a senior as well. And so this is where, if this is a class you want to take or it's something you must take, you might want to give yourself some time to continue to build a foundation just as a high school student. And like Ann said, get some of those executive functioning strategies and skills better in place before you take on a course like advanced placement chemistry or advanced placement environmental science. Sorry, I'm trying to like read the chat and go from the notes. I'll wait on the chat. As you can see at the bottom, there's also a number of other year-long electives that you are eligible for. We have 2 advanced placement computer science courses, AP Computer Science Principles, which is more of I don't know that introductory is the right word, but it's a little bit of,
It's more
thank you,
conceptual than
thank you,
programming heavy,
thank you. So it's
but
more
it is
concept.
not easy. It's not easy.
Right. And in contrast to that, AP Computer Science A, which is a Java-based course, is quite challenging, is very language heavy, and is for somebody I would say that is very interested in computer science, whereas the computer science principles course is maybe for somebody looking to get more of like a exposure to it. Um, the AP Computer Science A is for students that have some computer programming experiences outside of school, or maybe in another course that they've taken along the way that they are looking to like dive very deep into. Um, and then lastly, on the advanced placement front is art history. Fantastic course, probably I would say deceivingly challenging. Synthesizing pictures, architecture, art, artifacts with time
History.
periods,
Yeah.
history, what was going on, why is this person depicted with a halo above their head, and tell me about this period of time and contrast it to this painting from a different period of time. So it brings together a lot of different domains. It's a lot of fun. Students really enjoy it. Um, Not something to be taken at the same time as AP World History, in our opinion, but definitely a great class to take if art and history are something that you're curious about or excited by at some point in the future. There's a number of semester-long elective courses. Um, as Anne alluded to in the beginning, not everything you sign up for you're guaranteed to take, but I would say, sorry. Uh, as a sophomore, you have a little bit more flexibility in your schedule now that you're no longer in health, and you're able to kind of open things up a little bit. So if you're interested in some of these semester-long electives, now's a good time to take one of those, or more than one. I'm just looking
I'll
quickly.
I
All
can
of those.
answer the chat.
Okay. Yeah.
We will share this presentation when we share the recording. And then I'm a former science teacher from the Bronxville Science Department, so I'm happy to answer the question. We did move to core probably 20 years ago before I even joined Bronxville in order to expose students to all four sciences before they graduated high school. Is taking AP Chem after just a semester of chemistry challenging? It is. Yes, but students do it successfully. The key is for that student to really be passionate about chemistry, and almost more important, to be a very good math student. AP Chemistry requires math skills and the skills of abstraction that strong math students have who are 10th graders. If a student is maybe not the strongest math student right now, by senior year, they might be ready for AP Chem, but I would not recommend it for sophomore year. So you want to be a strong math student, really like chemistry, and you will definitely be successful in AP Chem.
I think a similar thing might be able to be said about AP Computer Science A in terms of your math sort of
Yes.
aptitude. This is just everything we just covered in a different format. Also, something that you did receive or will receive with the appointment date and time for your meeting with your counselor. We just sort of put each year's courses on a sort of one pager. So there's pages for sophomore, junior, and senior year. And while we don't necessarily do this during our meetings, it might not hurt for some of you that are extra excited about some of the classes that are available to you as juniors and seniors. It might make sense to map out 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, even if it's just like roughly in your head. I mean, as you can see from Oceans and the anatomy course, things are introduced. Sometimes new things are introduced year over year. But it's a good idea to like sort of have an idea of what you want to take and when. Because I think if you just go to the next slide, again, just want to like reiterate that, first off, nobody gets accepted to college during 10th grade, and nobody gets denied from college in 10th grade. So for those of you that are excited about, taking on more challenging courses, you have to keep in mind that like the quantity in which you choose from needs to be manageable. This is about quality, not quantity. So you can't, like Ann said, go from no AP courses and only one science class a day or a cycle, to two science classes, one of them being advanced placement and, two other advanced placement courses. It's too much. Even if you could potentially manage it, you wouldn't want to, trust me. We sort of have to problem solve when students bite off more than they can chew. You don't want to go down that path. It's a terrible amount of work. All of these advanced placement courses have, a considerable amount of work to do over the summer, but which you have plenty of time to do. And then when you get back to school, there's, a serious assessment on what was, studied over the summer. So you don't want to start the year off on like the wrong foot or just not feeling like you're going to have a successful year. So you want to choose wisely. You want to think about quality of classes. Um, there's been a few meetings I've had where students are like, oh, I probably had more time to take an additional science class in ninth grade. So then like and if you love science, then maybe that's the area you focus in for 10th grade. Um, Again, nobody gets into college based on the courses you take during 10th grade. What can happen is you can put yourself in a position where you choose to take too many challenging classes or too many classes, and you have to sort of like keep up with that momentum year over year. And by the time you get to senior year, you're going to be a little burnt out and not ready for sort of like the next phase, which is what we're really preparing you for. So you want to pace yourself. You want to think about quality over quantity. Um, you obviously want to keep in mind, whatever counsel is coming from your school counselor. Anne mentioned those invitations. Unless you have a meeting this week, which you should have received an invitation for over the weekend, those invitations for next week and the subsequent week will go out most likely tomorrow and at the latest Thursday. I wanted to wait for these slides and the recordings. I think that's it. I don't know if you want to tack on anything there at the end, Anne.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, there was a question about students continuing language. They absolutely do, and we would recommend most students to do 4 years, even though New York State only requires one. Most of the colleges our students are interested in attending want at least 3, usually 4 years of a world language. I would just say that taking no APs is normal for 10th graders. Taking one AP is a challenge for 10th graders, and rarely does it make sense to take two. So I'm just trying to put in context because there's sort of rumors that go around among students, and then we end up with students thinking that taking 3 APs sophomore year makes sense. That does not make sense. It is too much. We are talking about teenagers who should also have a life and sleep and enjoy their friends and do things they like to do that do not have to do with homework, which is probably something they don't like to do anyway. So please, please, your guidance counselor is happy to give you this information and work with you to figure out if it makes sense to take an AP, and if so, which one. I am always happy to speak to parents or students about this. We really want our students to have a positive experience, enjoy their classes, get enough sleep, enjoy their friends, enjoy high school. So we're trying to share with you what we think is the best formula for that. And as I mentioned earlier in this presentation, I live by this in my household. I told my daughter not to move up in math. By the way, she continues to love math because she can manage it. And she might do some like research in math next year because she enjoys it so much. I don't think that would be the case if she had moved up. She would have felt overwhelmed and probably slept less, which would have been a problem for me because I like to go to bed early. She needs to go to bed early as well for that to happen. So again, we just want to stress there are a lot of great options that we offer. You need to think longer term than just next year. You're going to want to increase the rigor over 4 years and continue to do well and be well. So please keep those things in mind. In terms of the math progression, students that are currently in Geo-Trig, if they maintain that progression, next year will be in Algebra 2 Pre-Calc. So junior year would end up in Diff Calc, and senior year AP Calculus BC. Students that are currently in Geo Honors, next year will take Algebra 2 Trig. Junior year will take Pre-Calculus Honors, and senior year AP Calc AB. And then students that are in Algebra 1 this year will take Geometry next year, Algebra 2 junior year, and Pre-Calculus senior year. We also have a non-AP Calc option that some students end up in from their junior year, but that's the general progression. And thank you, Erin, for sharing that as well. But your current math teacher is the best person to discuss what makes sense for you next year. Other questions? Feel free to unmute yourselves if you need to.
I have a question.
Yep.
First, thank you very much for this presentation. But my question is, will you be sharing this, the recording of this video with the slides?
Yes.
Okay.
And the slideshow. Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If you don't have any questions, have a good evening. Mr. Kind and I will stay on for a few minutes in case anyone wants to stay after and ask questions. And again, digest the information, and we're always available for questions later.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a million.
Thank you. Is the summer AI Python course full? No. So if I sent out an email about a summer camp kind of a thing at Bronxville around AI, you could still sign up for that.
I have a question, actually. So are you saying that if a student will take any AP course, he or she has to study over the summer?
Yes, there's summer work for every AP course.
And that's given by the school before the end of the year?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
And just to add on to that, that work is due the first day of school. And as of this year, we found students in another class that did not complete that work. And I imagine that will continue for years to come. So that work is expected to be ready to be turned. In some cases, might be turned in, the day before school starts, but will be expected to be turned in at the latest, the first day of school.
So every AP course has summer
Yes.
work requirements.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Most Latin students stay in Latin, but they don't all stay in Latin. So some students could choose to start in Spanish or Mandarin. And we usually run a section of each of those. Guidance counselor meeting should be in the next few weeks. And if your meeting isn't this week, then Erin, they should expect to receive.
Yeah, they'll receive something hopefully tomorrow, if not Thursday at the latest, with the date and time of their child's appointment and their invitation to join us.
There's a question about the mock ACT, SAT, and I'll tell you from my own experience. Again, I have a sophomore. I didn't even have her take it this year. Now, a lot of her friends took it their sophomore year. I said, no, you can take it junior year, because a lot of the math you need for those, you're really not going to get until you finish sophomore year. So it's an inaccurate representation of your math ability until then. You are welcome to do your child's mock SAT or ACT, but we do give the PSAT in the fall, and any 10th grader who wants to take it can. But I don't think it's necessary for 9th graders. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I didn't, the question must have just came to you. I would just add on to that. I think in the spirit of raising funds, the junior class wanted to capture more students. I think the only thing I would say is, it's going to be old by the time, the current ninth graders take the SAT, but the SAT is changing as of Saturday. It's now going to be on a computer, and it's a little bit different than especially than when we took it. So there is a tiny bit of value of getting a little bit more experience in that testing format for ninth graders as it relates to the SAT. But Anne is absolutely correct that the majority of the math, regardless of what math class you're in as a ninth grader, I shouldn't say the majority, some of the math, regardless of what math class you're in as a ninth grader, you may not have seen, and your results are going to they're not going to be necessarily actionable results. So if you're doing it, I would think about it as more of like an experience of like showing up to the testing center on a Saturday, sitting for 2 hours or 3 hours, and kind of getting that sort of practice versus, I don't know certain things on the test and I need to start studying, because that is not the purpose of the mock test for a ninth grader.
And again, I will just say no kid needs practice showing up on a Saturday to take a test. But that's just me. And our kids generally know how to take tests. Can
True.
you jump from Spanish 1 to Spanish 3? Is it possible? Yes. Your child should talk to their Spanish teacher, and they would need to take a placement test in August to verify they know enough to go into Spanish 3. It's possible to take a second world language. It is sometimes difficult to schedule. So I'm not going to guarantee it, because not enough students do it to make it really a focus of how we schedule things.
And also, just to add to that, it is possible, and some students do it. It also takes away the option of taking some other type of class. So if you're interested in philosophy and engineering, and you want to, like, you can only fit so many classes in your schedule during the day.
There's a question about having a freshman dance. I welcome our freshmen to come to me with this, but they haven't, and my sense is the kids aren't really interested in one. But if they are, they're actually meeting with me Thursday morning about a freshman class trip. So if they want to talk to me about a dance, I would be happy to. The Spanish language progression, if you took Spanish in middle school, you're in Spanish 9 this year. Next year would be 3, junior year would be 4, and senior year would be AP. So that's how you end up going. Or this year you might be in Spanish 2. I don't think we'd have any ninth graders in Spanish 2 though, right, Aaron? It was mostly
There might be
10th
one or
graders.
two just for scheduling purposes,
So if
but
you're in Spanish 2 this year, you could also end up in Spanish 3 next year. That's where you would go. Then 4 your junior year and AP senior year. Thanks, everyone. If you have any other questions, there's a couple. Will there be mixed 10th and 12th graders?
yes.
Oh,
Yes, and any AP course, AP art history, AP computer science, AP chem, any course that's I really more an AP, but also during junior and senior year, that's not specific to that grade level, is going to have students of different grades in it.
I think the only one in 10th grade that's just 10th graders is
Is
AP
World.
World.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. If you come up with other questions, we're always here to answer them.
Thanks,
We
everybody.
don't have a journalism class. We do have Bronco TV, though. And we do have an Echo Club, which is the school newspaper. All right. Thank you.
Thank
Night.
you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, it's not allowing me to end it, Aaron.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay, maybe if you stop